On a night like any other night, Coast to Coast AM was live on radio in Washington State. The overnight program discussed all things uncanny and entertained the discussion of a local man who claimed his backyard held something otherworldly. He would call in periodically over the next 5 years, each time with new information about a magical, bottomless pit in his backyard. What started as a piece of local lore eventually required a full government intervention, and the man was never heard from again. Today we're discussing the eerie urban legend of Mel's Hole. This is Red Web. Welcome back, Task Force, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the unknown. I'm your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
This sounds like a fun case right here. This is mystery, conspiracies, like what's going on in the backyard, just like the people listening in on the radio call that are entertained for the 5 years. I'm sure we're going to be entertained, getting little trickles of like, I don't know. It's just very, it feels story structured.
Yes.
And then it crescendos in something massive happening, and then a disappearance. Like,
it's got all the ingredients of a good,
It sounds like a great story off the bat. And the thing is, the fact that already my tinfoil hat is squeezed on a little tighter than it usually is because of what do you mean he was saying all these things? And you're like, I'm not sure. You know, it's some guy telling a wild story. It's a fun series, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean the government gets involved, right? Like, what evidence do we have of that? And then he goes missing,
and then he's never heard from again.
Like, it validates
like,
the story, man.
It does.
The government just, you know what I mean? Like, I'm getting a little ahead of myself and my thoughts, but the government is validating this man's wild stories.
It is out the gate one of the most interesting stories. I will say it's an urban legend. We're going to talk about the fact or fiction of it when it gets to the theories. It's just one of those cases. Do you believe in it? Do you not believe in it? Why? Why not? We'll break all of that down. But this is, like you said, you nailed it. It is a fun one. This is a short one because last week I feel like we had one of our heaviest or longest episodes we've had in a while. We just wrapped our 6-year anniversary stream. And so with all the things going on in the Red Web universe, we felt that this would be a perfect time to kind of have a lighter one, a little shorter one, a little bit more lighthearted as well. There's there's always a few content warnings, right? But less than usual here. But yeah, we are here in the heart of July. It is boiling here in Texas. Yeah, and if you want to continue, by the way, celebrating that 6-year anniversary of ours, you can still go to store.redwebpod.com. We've got about 2.5 weeks remaining for our merch, our founders merch that comes out every year, but exclusively available here in July. And all 6-year anniversary merch purchases continue to support the stretch goals through the end of the month. So even though the stream is over, you can continue to chip away at any stretch goals we didn't hit on the stream. Again, the merch is available until the end of July, unless you're a Patreon member, in which case you'll have a few extra days. Also on the stream, we just unveiled our Patreon exclusive Red Web Mystery Tour shirt. So if you want to join us at redwebpod.com, our Patreon page, you can get access to that shirt just for you guys for supporting us directly. And then this Friday, Fredo, we just recorded this. I'm very excited for the task force to hear it, but we've got Movie Club About Obsession, the recent indie horror.
That was probably a movie that we go so in depth on so many levels in terms of just like, I don't know. It was probably our most discussed film.
Yeah, I'd say so.
We could have gone for another half hour. It was a long episode, but we could have gone even longer. And we really peel back the layers of that film.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like Fredo breaks down the plot very lightly to kind of guide the conversation if you're new to Movie Club or you just joined, our Patreon. And that kind of guides our insights. Like Christian joins us as well, if you're familiar with our producer, Guy in the Chair, and we all kind of give our takes. What do we like? What do we dislike? What are the reads, the Easter eggs, the themes? And this one's got a lot, like Fredo said, to break down. So if you haven't seen that movie, either go see it, join us, as we kind of break down the plot. But with that said, that is our business of the week. Let's dive into Mel's Hole, this mysterious, dare I say, magical, bottomless pit. Okay. So let me give you the rundown, the overview, because, typically this is me walking you through a case you haven't heard from before. But Fredo, have you ever heard any inklings of this on the internet, in kind of the rumor mill or anything like that?
No, not at all. I have not.
Okay. All right. Let me indulge your curiosity then and strap on those tinfoil hats. I can hear those buff brains kind of bulging at the seams there. But according to local legend, Mel's Hole is a seemingly bottomless, large hole in the ground, obviously, near Ellensburg, Washington. The first reported sighting of this hole was made by a man named Mel Waters. This is essentially where the hole gets its name, Mel's Hole, which kind of makes it weird, but don't get weird about it. So Waters calls into the radio show called Coast to Coast AM, and this was on February 21st, 1997. So not all that long ago, but you're in that digital analog crossover era of the 90s. And we've talked about Coast to Coast AM. They're a radio show that explores all sorts of things that we kind of dabble in, whether it be paranormal, extraterrestrials, cryptids, things like that. And it was hosted by a man named Art Bell. And I do have a picture. If you want to know what Art looks like, here is a picture of that man sitting next to a bunch of that 90s tech.
Okay, he's dressed in all black.
All black. He's the Steve Jobs of his time.
Yeah, he's just, it's a nice little shot of him in his comfy chair, his radio little desk. He's got speakers, he's got all the little buttons and everything like that.
Yeah.
Vibing.
A room filled with buttons is a good room. I don't know what about it, but you got that ka-chunk, and I'm in. You see all the cassettes behind him? That's a vibe.
Yeah.
You know what? That aesthetic is, mwah, I love that.
Yeah.
So he calls in and he starts talking about this hole that showed up in his backyard, or that he discovered. So, I should give you some background on his property. It's about 9 miles west of Ellensburg, and this is in the Kittitas County area of Washington. And on that land, he discovers this hole. He tries to measure this hole using a fishing line to figure out how deep it is. So he gets a bunch of fishing line. By many reports, and I think this is what he says when he calls into the radio show, like you can go listen to old recordings of this, he says he went and got like extra large 5,000 yard spools of fishing line, tied a weight to the end of it, and then lowered it down. That's about 15,000 feet for anybody. He lowers that down, and when he runs out of line and still hasn't hit the bottom, he grabs another spool, ties it, and then continues to lower that down until he hopefully gets to the bottom, right? Just trying to figure out the depth. Now, Waters claims that by the time he used 80,000 feet, or just over 24 kilometers of fishing line, he still hadn't hit the bottom. It was still going down.
So he just kept tying more fishing line to it. At what point, though, does the tension snap all of it, or just like it break? You know what I mean? Like,
that's a great question. You know what? Honestly, part of that is going to show up in one of the theories as to like, would a spool of fishing line make it down that far? You're entering into the Earth's crust to a dramatic depth.
Yeah.
Okay. 80,000 feet. By the way, also, if we're talking about 5,000 yard spools, 15,000 feet, that's, 4 spools is 60,000. How do you measure 80,000 feet? You're like 2/3 of the way through the spool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm getting a little critical right off the gate.
That's the thing, though. That's so you got to get behind it. Like, I do love. My initial thought was like, I love the detective work here, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But we are kind of getting to a point. I'm like, can the fishing line hold how much tension? And then from like the science behind it, like,
yeah,
will the knot hold the tension? It could be that the fishing line can, but the knots can't, or it's not tied well enough, and then so the tension snaps it. Like, that all comes into play, because when you're talking about these ridiculous depth numbers, in my mind, and like, okay, I gotta, like, how are we performing this feat here?
Let's science this. Yeah.
Seemed like it'd be so easy. Just I took a bunch of fishing line, I kept tying to each other, and then it was fine.
Christian, I'm gonna give you a little bit of homework right now, if you don't mind me crunching these numbs. I don't know, okay, what fishing line weighs per foot, and it's probably not a lot. But Fredo, you're onto something. When you're talking 80,000 feet, that's roughly 15 miles, again, 24 kilometers of fishing line.
Yeah.
Eventually, it doesn't weigh a lot, but 15 miles of fishing line is going to weigh something. Now, fishing line is strong. It's meant to like catch a marlin. You're going to be, it's it bends the line. Sometimes the pole snaps before the line does. It all comes down to what kind of fishing line he's using or what weight he's got. But I think you're onto something. So Christian, if you don't mind, I'm very curious if somehow you calculate what 80,000 feet of fish. Okay. Or what does maybe just like 5 spools of 5,000 yard fishing line weigh? And then is the tensile strength of fishing line able to hold that? Or the knots he tied into it? Anyway, I just gave you a doozy. I'm gonna let you cook on that. But I want to give context while he calculates away in the background. For reference, the deepest man-made hole ever drilled into the earth was Russia's Kola Super Deep borehole. Now, this took decades to complete, and it only reached about 40,000 feet. I say only, that's tremendous. It's about 12,192 meters, actually, exactly. And so that's half. We're talking about a hole that is super wide to the point where you could chuck a fridge into it, if not like a car, and double that depth out of like nowhere. And for the mind-blowing context here, because, you know, it starts to get a little nebulous when you talk about like 40,000 feet, 80,000 feet, whatever. If you took the elevation distance from the highest peak of Mount Everest to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the Challenger Deep, that would be about 65,000 feet, 12.3 miles, or just shy of 20 kilometers of elevation depth. So this hole is still greater than the tip of Everest down to the Marianas Trench.
Yeah, and for just someone in their backyard, be like, I tied so much fishing line and it all held together. I'm just like, it's a tall tale.
I mean, I like the red-blooded American nature of it. You know, this could just be some farmer who's like, that's how I'm gonna measure the hole depth. You know, that's very bog standard. But when you start talking 80,000 feet. And you still haven't hit the bottom, so you know it's more than that, I start to go, okay, so Mel would call Coast to Coast AM 5 different times throughout the years of 1997, all the way to his final call in 2002. Although we have 5 calls on record, we don't know the exact dates, sources kind of vary, so ultimately it's unclear what those dates of those calls are. We know roughly a few of them. But in each call, Waters would divulge more information about this pit. The first time he called in, he detailed some of the strange happenings that he noticed around the pit. And this is where we go from hey, I found a hole and it's greater than 80,000 feet into the evolution of here's what I saw, here's what I experienced at the hole. This is where you start to like move away from traditional physics and you no longer can measure this hole in the same way as you can't poke and prod like you like, you know?
You're right, yeah.
So he calls in, he starts to outline some of these strange happenings. For starters, his neighbors told him that the hole had essentially been a dumping ground for several years, indicating that the locals knew about this hole and maybe never reported it, or it was just something that they knew about. Now, I don't know how common it is for there to be just a casual local dumping ground, but some of the people from the community, it is said through Mel here on the phone call, that they would come to this hole to dispose of things, whether it be old fridges, or in one case, you know, just dumping of waste, unwanted things. In one case, somebody said they took their pet who had passed and off it went. They're like, okay, here's my burial for my pet. And then into the hole it went. I mention it for a reason because it'll come back around. But obviously, this hole being of this great depth would never fill up, and it never did. But what's interesting on top of this is that no one ever heard the thump or the bang of anything ever hitting the bottom.
Yeah, and my mind too is like, how is everyone keeping this a secret? But then again, is there a secret to be kept? If everyone's just like, oh, it's just a really, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, there's just a really big hole there and people just dump stuff into it when they want to. There's nothing really crazy about a big hole.
Right, there's nothing like, I'm not keeping it a secret, but I'm not writing home about it. It's just a hole.
Exactly.
But also, I'm illegally dumping fridges into it for some reason, so maybe that's why I don't want to say anything.
Yeah. It was like, well, hold on, it's my illegal little dumping ground, so.
Yeah, it is interesting. And I'm also like, how long do you have this property before you stumbled upon this hole and not fall in? You know, I don't know.
Before you jump back in.
Oh.
Bad news. I don't think I can answer the question.
That is
look, it was a
that is completely fair. I'm treating you like the hive mind of Google. You know, like you are the like.
Why don't you go ahead and do this complex scenario here that I've laid upon?
Christian, just go ahead and crunch this out. And you're just going up and up and up.
But alas.
Yeah, right? Yeah, for a second there, I saw you in my vision. I went, Christian, star date.
Yeah, so to explain why, fishing line isn't necessarily measured in weight as the line itself.
Okay.
When you're looking at weights being assigned to it, it's more of a test of strength to see what's the maximum tensile weight that the line can handle before it snaps. And that can vary drastically. It can also vary based on the material that the line is made from. And then in terms of trying to attribute that to or correlate that with the length of the line, that depends on the fishing reels that you're using, the fishing rods that you're using. So if we're talking about just line, there's really, at least from what I can see right now, there's really no way to say, unfortunately.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay, that's totally valid. Maybe some of the buff minds out there, you know, you can string together about 80,000 feet of spool and just slap that on a scale somewhere and let us know, you know? There's something about that. And hey, maybe it weighs way less than we think, and it's totally possible. Fredo, Christian, boys, let's jot this one down. I think we have an experiment on our hands. I think we got to find a hole. I think we got to find 80,000 feet of fishing line, a jar of applesauce, and a giant spoon, and I'll see you at I-35. They're digging these giant holes next to I-35 and putting like some sort of drainage underneath it. I think that might be deep enough.
Just run it ourselves.
It's just like Keenan and Kel, where at the end of every episode, he's like,
"Yep,
oh, here we go." Dun, dun, dun. We got something on our hands. Maybe just an off the beaten path episode of Case Files. You know what I mean? Just a lot of fishing line, you, me, and a hole.
A lot of fishing line. How much of it does it? How much holds?
This episode of Red Web is sponsored by Rocket Money. Thinking about finances and setting a budget can be stressful and is the last thing someone should have to think about over what should be a relaxing weekend. That's where Rocket Money comes in to help. Rocket Money can track subscriptions and has the ability to cancel unwanted ones within the app with a few taps, saving users over $880 million in canceled subscriptions. The app also consolidates checking, savings, loans, and investments into a single dashboard to give users a clear view of their financial picture. I, for one, love having this comprehensive overview of all of my finances in a single location. I can see all my subscriptions, my accounts, everything in one little dashboard because, hoo boy, can it be troublesome and annoying to try to track it across all the different sources and banks and apps and whatnot. So this makes things so much easier. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. Let Rocket Money help you reach your financial goals faster. Join at rocketmoney.com/redweb. That's rocketmoney.com/redweb. rocketmoney.com/redweb.
Okay. So thank you, Christopher, for looking into that. I really do appreciate you doing that on the fly. Definitely insightful despite having no answer. I think that's just a tough one. But coming back to this hole, it never filled up. And nobody ever heard a bang or a clang of the fridge or the pet or whatever hitting the bottom. Now, what's interesting is this continues to evolve. So Waters goes on to say that he has his dogs there and they would be very uneasy about approaching this hole. Now I have to say this dog is way smarter than the man.
Right.
But the dog's refusing to go anywhere near it. He couldn't even provoke the dog to come closer, whether it be with treats or what have you. Now, Waters also begins to report that radios would begin to act strangely as he approached this hole. He alleged that while near this vast cavern of pit, his radio would pick up stations that seemed to be like old broadcasts. The music would be a little bit old-timey. The source of this is unclear, but basically he'd go from listening to Sabrina Carpenter, or I guess in the day, NSYNC, and as he walks up to it, it switches into like, something from
time period.
A different time period.
Interesting.
Other times, the radio would kind of freak out a little bit, static, and it would return, and he would hear voices on the station, but he claimed they were speaking languages that he says no one could recognize. You know, there are a lot of global languages. Of course, Mel Waters has not heard all of them, I'm sure, nor could recognize them just off the cuff, but, you know, he's basically saying there's some sort of unearthly language coming out of this. Now, another source claims that he was once able to pick up a broadcast featuring baseball commentary from somewhere in the 1960s, accompanied by music of that time. So he's getting all sorts of things from different decades and different places coming out of this hole for some reason.
Very interesting. But also, is it just picking up weird frequency waves?
Weird frequencies, I mean, who knows? Maybe there's somebody with like a, what is it called? Pirate radio? What is that, where you have your own radio station illegally?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You know, maybe someone's just chucking out their tunes on the ones and twos and they just like, you know, I like reliving the 60s, man. Let's like watch this old Yankees game. Or, I don't know, you know. Jam, our social media coordinator, says her brother got, you know, the Spotify does the Wrapped thing.
Mm-hmm.
They aged him at like what, 102?
Yeah.
As far as his music tastes.
Yeah, people were getting aged on those raps, man. People were getting called out.
He's like, what? I like the stuff from the teens, just like the other teens, not like 10 years ago, but 100.
Crazy.
But so who knows, you know? Like, so it is interesting, and so, but it shows that now this bottomless pit is now taking on new properties, strange elements that are harder to describe here, but it continues to evolve, because apparently a few days after this, Waters Calls Bells show again, February 24th, I believe this is the second call, and in this call he claims that a neighbor had disposed of their deceased beloved family dog into this hole, for whatever reason. This is how they decided to say goodbye. And to their surprise, a few days after that, the very same dog was found alive in the woods nearby.
Pet cemetery type stuff going on here, man.
It's Pet Cemetery.
I wanted to say it in the moment.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, someone put a dog down the hole. I'm like, we've seen this.
My question to you is, and maybe this is too dark to even answer, a hole starts turning dead things into living things. Are you poking and prodding? Are you off to the cemetery with a spade to see if you can wake up someone?
Hell no.
I mean, I don't know why I asked. I knew that answer.
Hell no.
But then you're not in a movie.
Look, I will grieve so hard when my little corgi passes, you know, years and years and years from now, or a loved one. But what's gone is gone, man.
What's gone is gone. Ain't no way.
And that's the beauty. That's the beauty of life.
That is the beauty of life, is its impermanence and the moments we have together. I completely agree with you. Like I said, a very dark question.
You can't look at it the same. Like,
no, especially when you know Pet Cemetery exists. Ain't no part of me wants to go throw a body in there when I know what could happen.
That's what I'm saying. You're just going to lie next to that person who was dead and is now alive and just be kosher about it? No, hell no.
It's one thing to stumble into it, just like Pet Cemetery starts, and just how this moment happens. It's another thing to do it knowingly.
Yeah.
So what's interesting here, okay, so now we're getting into the very strange. So this dog is found supposedly alive in the woods, still wearing the collar that it wore when it was deceased or what have you. But what's interesting is that, so this kind of confirms that it's the same dog. And what's interesting is that it was unable to recognize its owners. Okay, so now I know the doubt is starting. The red, maybe the orange and yellow flags are starting to fly. Hold on to them because we get deeper, all right? Now there's another source that claims that Waters lowered a bucket of ice into this hole as one of his many experiments. And I love this. These are just backyard experiments. I'm putting ice in the hole. But when he brings the ice back up, the ice didn't melt whatsoever, but it's warm to the touch. Now this breaks physics. My brain don't accept this. Heat transfer goes from high energy state to low energy state. That's why when you touch ice, it feels cold because your body's energy is going into the ice, almost like some sort of endothermic reaction, but it's not. It's just conduction. Just like if you touch something hot, the energy is certainly leaping to you. So you can't have water ice feel warm. We're talking about broken physics now.
Right, yeah. It's getting unreal. The reality's different.
Right. Now it continues. Now, I don't know how he noticed this. Maybe he left his bucket there overnight, but he says he noticed that metals that were left close to the hole would transform. For example, steel would turn into copper, brass would turn into silver, etc. Now, again, this is scientifically impossible, and we continue to move further and further into the metaphysical, into the impossible realms. It harkens back to the old mystical goal of alchemy, which is to turn lead into gold or achieve immortality or what have you. If you're interested in alchemy, by the way, Fredo and I did an entire episode on the pseudonym of Fulcanelli, the last alchemist, an alchemist from France in the 20th century. A wild and interesting episode if you want to go explore that. But ultimately, these are different chemical elements. Brass is copper and zinc. There's nothing silver about it. And so this is truly a transmutation from one element to another, which is to say that this hole is now truly a magic hole. That's where we're at.
Yep.
The depth is one thing. Now we're breaking physics left, right, and center. Now another claim comes through. He says that the hole periodically would emit a large black beam into the sky. He described it as blacker than black. And so when this beam would emanate at nighttime, it was so dark that it made the nighttime sky appear pale in comparison.
This is just starting to get ridiculous.
Yes.
Like, it went from oh, okay, what's happening here? Just a little hole. And then now I'm just like, this story is a grand one.
I'm losing the thread. Right. Like, I love it when we can poke and prod and go, well, maybe, but also what about this? Let's consider it. Now it's like, okay, well, this is why the theories are, is it real or is it not? Because okay, to have a light beam that is the absence of light, see, at this point, you're literally throwing out the most opposite physics possible,
right?
And seeing what sticks. Are you pranking this radio show kind of thing?
Yeah, reality, science, it's all going out the window here. It's it has its own rules.
But despite these rules, I want to say, despite these rules being obvious, flaunting of physics, this is the kind of stuff I find very fascinating. Of course, we're going to take it at face value. We're going to analyze it. We're not just going to believe it, but I find it very fascinating. So now it's the year 2000. We've had all of these claims, but Waters calls again. It's been about 3 years since his first call, but this time it seems different. Instead of speaking in a tone of amazement and instead of speaking in a way that shares this escalating tale of the magical properties of this bottomless pit, he starts to sound afraid on this call. He claims that he was visited by men in unmarked black vehicles. Soldiers emerged wearing biohazard suits, building a fence around this property, and then armed guards are appearing to guard and stand watch over the perimeter of this fence. This, if it's a ruse, is a long ruse to keep up. But he claims that the men told him that the land was now restricted because of, quote, sensitive environmental testing, end quote. So some reports claim that Waters was told it was blocked off because a plane had crashed in the area, and this is the reason that they said that you need to vacate the premises, this is our land now. And initially he protested, but then he was threatened. Apparently, and this is, I guess, per his report here, the officials claimed that they would find a drug lab on his property and have him arrested if he didn't comply. This is what he's saying. If you don't get out of here, we're going to go find something that you don't like us to find here, and you're gone. What's interesting, and if you have a threat like that, you're going to get what you want, I think.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that in addition to the threat, they then offered him a large sum of money to leave the land forever.
What?
Now, some sources claim that offer was $3 million a year, a salary, right? Some say it was less at $250,000. Either way, you don't need to threaten me with a drug lab if you got money like that. But it's so interesting because, again, I can't help but see the inconsistencies here. If they've got a threat like that, I think they've got you. They don't need to pay you off.
Right, exactly. So why are they willing to pay you off
Why per year? Oh yeah, we'll give you $3 million a year for the rest of your life. It would be a lump sum to just get gone, right?
Yeah.
That's what I would think.
I just don't understand. You don't want to have any ties to, just, hey, get out of here. Why would they waste the resources? I don't know. What, to keep them hush about it? That's what the money is for in the first place.
Again, the blackmail's enough for me to be I ain't seen nothing ever.
Right. Cool. I'm gone. Bye. Never see me again. Let alone getting paid and then kind of being on a payroll for a little bit. So yeah, the story is getting really out of hand.
It's almost and I'll be honest, as fun as it's gotten so outlandish that I'm is this man just pushing the limits of what's believable to see what the host of this radio show will accept at face value? It's kind of what it feels like. He's like poking and prodding and being like, you won't guess what I got him to take today. Okay, well, with the threat under his belt and apparently this large sum of money, somewhere between $250,000 and $3 million a year, he complies. He flees to Australia, and after this, he would not call back to the show for 2 years. Shortly after his move, this is where things start to get a little interesting, and it starts to cross the realm into an internet mystery of a kind. Because shortly after this move, satellite images via the Terra server of Ellensburg showed 2 opaque white boxes, approximately where Waters' land was. So take a look at this image as I kind of outline what this means. So Terra server was essentially the Google Earth before Google Earth. It was a website that provided satellite imagery of the Earth. And this is where the internet part comes in, because people are saying, okay, well, this is just outside of the town that he lived. This is his land, or this is kind of where he was living. Why are there 2 kind of conjoined white boxes touching off in this area? Are they trying to hide the hole from satellite images?
Got it. And the base or whatever they built around it.
Or yeah, and then the base and the military or federal footprint. I didn't even think about that part. Because these are pretty, like you look at the town off to the right, these are pretty big boxes.
It's sizable. Again, it's as crazy and wild as the story seems, we're getting little pieces of like evidence here that like, okay, the government was here.
Or something.
They're covering some stuff. They could be possibly covering up the location and their footprint and everything. It's like, as wild as it is, we're getting some stuff.
we got something to chew on here. Yeah, so it like kind of starts to draw you back in. In addition to this, Kat, our researcher, did her best to find amongst all the many scattered, less reputable sources, all the truth and data that she could and collate that. And in addition to these more censored images, she also has, take a look at the next image. It's like screenshots of essentially Google Earth. It is a coordinate system of a hole. And I think I tried to type this in and it took me somewhere else. I tried to search Mel's hole on Google Earth. That doesn't work. But I have seen different coordinate systems for what Mel's hole is, and it leads to like sealed concrete pads. Like, it starts to get a little hairy. So all I just want to say here is, I don't know if this is officially the same spot or not, but it does look like the backyard of a homestead, and it looks, well, what do you think it looks like?
Yeah, I mean, the backyard of a homestead, a lot of land.
Mm-hmm.
The view that's furthest away is like, you got a little Google Maps pin on the hole. Then there's a magnification of the hole, and it looks like a crater, all right. It looks sizable.
Yeah, something. Like in the close-up, and I hate that the pin is right on the hole. This isn't our screenshot. This is just on the internet. You see a lit up side, and then almost perfectly down the middle, there's a shadow line, and then it's dark, which would indicate, that the sun is at an angle, that this is some sort of, honestly, I want to see some other shadows. It looks like all the shadows are on the north side, which would indicate that this is not a rock, like a boulder, because you see all the little shrubs and stuff. The shadows are on the top side of the image, the north side.
Oh, that's a good point. Damn, I didn't even think about that.
And so if that's the case, I think that does confirm that this is a hole of some kind, definitely a divot, but I don't know if this shows that it's a bottomless hole. I also, okay, now we're getting into the vibe check territory.
Okay.
If this is where he lives, we got an address. Let's look up the deed history, but also like, how does the local community know this as a dumping ground if it's that close to his house? I mean, it's not super far away. It's not super close, but it's close enough that if people were dumping dogs and fridges, I think I'd start noticing people driving out into the depths of my property.
That's true.
And I would have seen this pretty quick.
Yeah, and they're probably doing it in the middle of the night and they got their headlights on, right? Like,
or something.
I mean, that's what I would think. So that's very interesting too. But I mean, like, would you care if people were dumping stuff?
Maybe he doesn't care, Maybe he doesn't. But again, I'm going to try to do it again after we record. I want to look up these coordinates. Actually, Christian, if you don't mind, try typing in these coordinates and see if it takes you to a similar image, because maybe I had a typo, but when I tried it before, it took me somewhere in like Europe, or it took me somewhere else, which I think I just messed up. But I didn't get these screenshots. And then I tried to look up the coordinates for Mel's hole so I could copy paste them in, found completely different coordinates that went to somebody else's backyard where there was like a concrete round slab. as if it had been like, that's where it was, but it's been sealed up. And,
How do you even seal that? You know what I mean? And the hole doesn't, like the slab doesn't just sink into it.
Yeah. Like, do you just like build a concrete slab, truck it out there, drag it over the hole, and then like, that's it? Because I'm also thinking like, why would you stand at the edge of this thing? If it's that deep of a hole, what if the edge just sloughed off? It just shears off and then you just fall in and you're gone.
That's true. That's very dangerous.
And then then that concrete plug falls in. A lot of things just aren't passing like the just gentle vibe check, but we'll get into the theories though here soon. But ultimately though, the arrival of these censored images, before these uncensored ones that I showed you, the arrival of these censored images has led many people to believe that the government was trying to cover up whatever phenomenon was taking place here. And Christian, who's quick on the ones and twos, pulls up his screenshot of these coordinates. What do you think, Fredo, taking a look at what Christian just shared, I believe from Google Maps?
Oh, that looked like a big hole.
But does it look like a big hole? Most of it's lit up, which means the sun's hitting solid surface. I just see sliver of shadow.
I mean, it could just be that the angle of the sun, it's just giving us that like big illumination.
Yeah, like you're just seeing the wall.
Yeah, you're seeing the wall because it like, if anything, you might see the lit up portion of the wall and then it all goes straight down.
It all goes straight down. Yeah, it depends on the angle of observation from the satellite too.
Yeah, dude, that's rough.
Hey, project number 2, case files on the road. We're gonna go find a hole.
I'll find that hole and I will look at it from a distance.
From a distance.
I don't want to fall in a hole.
No, we don't. We'll get one of those bomb bots, dude. We'll get a bomb bot with one of those little claw hands, and it's gonna just like, it's gonna pinch down and hold on to like the tip of the fishing line, and then it's gonna run out there. It's gonna hold a little spool. And then we'll just feed it from afar. We're miles away just feeding 80,000 feet of fishing line down this hole. And then we'll get a drone. You know what? Then we'll get a drone.
Oh, you get a drone.
Yeah. Okay. Is there a drone that's got a range of 80,000 feet?
Oof, probably not. And you gotta think about like the connection with the rock and everything. And yeah, you might be, that drone's gone.
That drone is gone.
That drone is gone.
Could you drop like GoPros on a cadence of every 5 seconds? And then they have a localized mesh network. So the bottom camera can speak up to the second, to speak up to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth. And so you could get a live view. You know what I'm saying? Like
oh my goodness.
Just keep dropping routers in.
Now we're getting into the intricacies and the science of it all.
This is insane.
Holy.
One stabilized GoPro so it doesn't spin around. It's aimed down. It's got a bright flashlight. I'm talking a mag light, or one of those things that lights up the forest at night. And it's looking straight down. And it's got a mesh network of routers also falling behind them. You know what I mean?
This man is Frankensteining this whole thing together.
I'm a farmer from 2020. Yeah. What's the year? 2026. Sorry, I came from the future. That's how advanced I am. This is okay. This is like 30 years old. We're talking about what a farmer would do in the 90s with fishing line. Now we're a farmer in the 20s. Okay. This is the difference with time. Chuck a couple of routers and a GoPro. Task force, let me know how brilliant that is. Okay, let's get back to brass tacks. He goes quiet. He escapes to Australia. That's what we know. 2 years goes by. The year is now 2002, and life is good. Hannah Montana is peaking right now. But Bell hears back from Waters. He calls in. He still sounds afraid, but perhaps even more paranoid than before, like this whole thing has continued to spiral. And he claims that he had returned to the US from Australia. However, almost as soon as he lands and gets off this plane, he says he is abducted. He says the next thing he remembers, Fredo, is that he woke up in an alley in San Francisco. He doesn't know how he got there. He's checking his body to figure out what's going on, and he says he has random, strange injection marks on his arms, and his back teeth are missing. He also realizes that when he finally comes to, the day between him waking up and the day between him landing, it's been about 12 days where he's completely blacked out and has no idea what has happened to him.
That's crazy. This whole thing is a mystery in itself.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're losing track of time. Like, it seems like reality doesn't function normally around here.
Right. And I think that's the through thread, is that reality continues to stay broken and more broken. Okay, in my head, if this is like, okay, well, you came back to the States, you broke your deal, this is the government acting, would they just fully disappear you? Like, I feel like the government, any given government, has the ability to just disappear a person. There's missing persons all the time.
Yeah, but would they? I mean, it would validate what's going on more. But then again, it's like, even if it validates it, like, what happens? You know what I mean? People just go, there's a mystery there, and no one's going to do anything about it because no one has any authority.
It's strange. I mean, again, I want to believe it just to assess it at face value, but I don't believe it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, if this is what happened, I don't know if this is the most obvious move for a government to make, if that's who did this, but I do think it's interesting because maybe this is to character assassinate. Let's have him look like, I don't know, a junkie or something. He's got these injection marks. They pull out some of his teeth. Like, I don't know. And maybe this is to discredit his claims. And so if he ever came forward again, people would be like, oh, well, this, that, and the other, and assess him on a societal level, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's a tactic that people use, is just discrediting the person.
Yeah. So they throw him into these, like, this strange scenario in a strange city to make him, you know, look like he went on a bender or something. Yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting turn on this case.
It's unexpected for sure.
Yeah. Now, he did have one more claim before he disappeared and never called back in ever again. So his final claim was that he was contacted by a Native American tribe, we don't know which, who wanted to consult him on a similar hole that they had found. So supposedly, this second hole was very similar in nature, but instead had a metal rim, seemingly was electrically charged, and this metal rim was also warm to the touch. I don't know where this was. Again, I don't know which tribe it is, so I can't look any closer, but this is what he shares on his final call. Then after he hangs up, we never hear back.
This episode of Red Web is sponsored by First Leaf. Do you like a good glass of wine at the end of the day but never really know what to buy? Enter First Leaf. It makes the whole thing easy. They match wines to your taste and send them right to your door. First Leaf delivers premium wines straight to your door every month. Just answer a quick quiz about your preferences and they'll send you personalized selections. No more guesswork, no more settling. Here's what really makes it click. Every box comes with easy to follow tasting notes and pairing suggestions right in the box. First Leaf works directly with wineries, which means you get access to award-winning bottles, including wines you can't always find at your local store, at prices well below retail. If you want better wine that actually fits your taste without the hassle of hunting for it, First Leaf makes it incredibly simple. Stop settling for wines that don't quite hit the mark. Head to tryfirstleaf.com/redweb to sign up and you'll get 50% off your first box plus free shipping for an entire year. That's tryfirstleaf.com/redweb. Tryfirstleaf.com/redweb. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp's 2026 State of Stigma report surveyed 2,000 Americans and revealed that 85% of Americans believe getting support is wise, yet 74% say society discourages people from doing so. What can society do to close that gap between believing in mental health support and actually seeking it? Enter BetterHelp. Finding mental health support and therapy can help people better understand their needs, feel more confident setting boundaries, and closing that gap, and BetterHelp is there to help you do it. BetterHelp therapists work according to a strict code of conduct and are fully licensed in the US. BetterHelp does the initial matching work for you so you can focus on your therapy goals. If you aren't happy with your match, switch to a different therapist at any time from their tailored recommendations. With over 30,000 therapists, BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform, having served over 6 million people globally. And it works. With an average rating of 4.9 out of 5 for a live session based on over 1.7 million client reviews. Don't let stigma stand in the way of support. Start therapy with BetterHelp. Sign up and get 10% off at betterhelp.com/redweb. That's betterhelp.com/redweb.
So this is where a brief but interesting investigation unfolds, and it starts to become a little bit more it moves from a like local urban legend into kind of an internet mystery a little bit here in the early days. So later that same year, it's 2002, there's a group of about 30 people who embark on a search for Mel's hole. Whatever this hole is, they want to find it, and they're led by a man named Gerald Osborne. And Osborne was, and this is really all we could find on him, was a shaman who referred to himself as Red Elk. They searched high and low. They navigated through dry creek beds, dense brush, and everything that they could kind of in the immediate area. And they found some sinkholes and some long abandoned mine shafts, but they didn't find anything that matched the description that Mel Waters had given. Something that was deep beyond measure, essentially. And maybe, looking back at these images, maybe those are sinkholes, or maybe those are like a piece of a mine shaft or something.
Oh, true. Could be.
But what's interesting here is that the more people that began to investigate the truth and reality behind this hole, this pit, the more cracks began to show in the story at large. For starters, there was no record of anyone named Mel Waters in Kittitas County. In fact, there's no documentation proving that anyone named Mel Waters ever existed in general.
Like not even the ownership of the house or anything like that?
No. In fact, I don't even know if we know for sure which house, which property, or where in the town or in the county this was. But ultimately, Kittitas County never had a Mel Waters in living there.
Interesting. I mean, tinfoil hat, the government could have wiped it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's the thing, is when you got the silver bullet, which is the government did it, you kind of become not necessarily, but unimpeachable, because it becomes the trump card. It becomes the gotcha.
Yeah.
Like, I win, the government can kind of do anything, hand wavy magic kind of thing. Now, on top of that, researchers could not find any property documents, I love this, tax documents, or land deeds that were linked to a name or a location, right? So nothing with Mel Waters, nothing to do with the satellite images that we discussed earlier. It's unclear, honestly. I was talking to Kat, I was like, well, let's look closer, let's see if we can maybe find who did own the properties where these censored images were, or where this hole that we just looked at was. But it's unclear who might have actually owned that property. We just don't know. And if we did know, all we would say is it's not him and we wouldn't dox somebody. But this has led, obviously, many people to believe that the nature of this story is fictional, that Mel Waters simply made this up, given that Coast to Coast AM certainly attracted stories of this type, many of which are to be believed, many of which bend reality a little bit. And that's kind of the place that Red Web lives, is let's take a look at those really interesting stories and see if we can unpack them, understand them, and find the truth within. But that leads us to our theories. Simply enough, and I'll let you guide the conversation here, Fredo,
okay.
Which you want to explore first. Was this a hoax, or is this some otherworldly phenomenon that was documented and then kind of hushed? Those are our two angles here.
Let's go with the route of, is this a hoax first?
Okay. So obviously this is the most obvious theory given what we just said, that Mel's hole is something of an imagination, a story made up by somebody going under the alias of Mel Waters. Now, I don't want to discredit the idea of there being an alias in general. If this was real, I don't know if I would say, hey, my name is Trevor Collins and I saw an alien. I think I'd be like, if you start hearing about a Huck Johnson and they have a very attractive silhouette, okay, you got to believe that it might be me. But it's not me, but it could be.
Could be.
Okay. Huck Johnson saw an alien, got down with it, cheeked up aliens.
Got down with it.
It rhymes, I'm just putting it all out there. But given the fact, again, and this kind of reiterates a few of the things I said, but given the fact that no one was able to find this mystical abyss, and that there's no records of a Mel Waters existence, many start to think that this is not just a theory, but that this is almost certainly not real. Additionally, geologists have come forward to speak on the geographical impossibility of this hole, which again, I love. I love the idea these buff minds come into play. So, talked about rocks sloughing off and this hole being kind of unstable, but geologist Joe Powell stated that the depth of this hole would almost certainly cause it to collapse into itself just due to the pressure and the heat of the surrounding earth. 80,000 feet, depending on where you are on this earth, is a heck of a distance through the earth's crust. It's not all the way through unless you're at the seabed, in which case you might punch through into the mantle, but it still gets very hot at that level.
Yeah.
You start boring down at 40,000 feet, these bore tips need to be diamond coated because they're essentially melting as they dig. And so he's saying that not only would the pressure from the crust around it, kind of constantly tectonic plate moving, it would be pushing into this void. This void has no resistance, and so it would just push into that, naturally fill that space. You also have the heat coming up from the bottom, which continues to keep it unstable, so it might crumble from down below.
I love the science behind this.
I love the science. I mean, if nothing else, it's a fascinating story with some really interesting science to debunk it. Now, there's another guy, I love this guy's name. There's another geologist named Pat Pringle.
Okay.
Once you pop, you can't stop.
You can't stop, Pat.
You can't stop, Pat. Okay, so they're claiming that a fishing line could not have lowered 80,000 feet, as the Earth's heat would snap it in half well before it was able to reach that depth.
That makes sense. That fishing line's very thin. It's got some, tensile strength, but when you're applying heat and everything like that, things are different.
Right. It might be able to hold on to a marlin, but you put a match underneath one of those things and it's going to melt and snap right away. So that's what I loved, that you were onto that. I loved that immediately you were thinking differently, but still valid. Okay, well, at that length, there's some sort of weight at play, and that must be this is outside of way outside of the confines of what fishing line is meant to do. Imagine trying to reel something in from 80,000 feet away. You caught a fish 12 miles north,
That's crazy. That's just an insane amount of length.
Now, ultimately, to me, kind of giving my thoughts here, this theory would answer for pretty much everything, from the man who didn't exist to the lack of reputable sources making it difficult to research this particular episode, all the way through the whole laundry list of physics-breaking properties. Now, does that change it in the minds of many believers and, people that believe, whether it be in aliens or the paranormal or in the metaphysical? It's fascinating. It's deeply attractive. It's intriguing. But there are a few kind of cornerstones that allow people to continue to believe in opposition of this theory. But what are your thoughts before I dive into that?
I think the science holds.
I think the science makes it very difficult. Now, are there science-breaking aliens and physics-breaking aliens out there? Absolutely, probably, right? I don't know. There's going to be life and science elsewhere in this universe that is stranger than we can comprehend. Again.
Oh, yeah.
A sufficiently advanced science is indistinguishable from magic. And so it's got to be out there somewhere. Is it here? That's the question. So in opposition to this previous theory, there are those who believe that Waters was telling the truth, that Waters, in fact, was a real person whistleblowing on what he was seeing in his own backyard. In response to the lack of documents surrounding his existence, some believe, as you kind of guesstimated here, Fredo, that they're unable to be found because the government had erased all traces of Mel Waters in an effort to silence him, erase his findings, or just simply discredit the story that was now on this radio station. Some have also speculated that the bottomless pit could actually be a portal to another dimension, some sort of time warp, anything like that. We've heard many hot spots and portals to hell and all sorts of things like that. And it's one of those things where you just kind of go, maybe it's this, and you hand wave it away and you don't really address it, but it helps answer for weird activity happening in a hot spot. But yeah, wibbly wobbly time stuff could be the answer for why his radio was freaking out and catching stray broadcasts from throughout the decades prior. I don't know. But people then say that also explains the dog coming back to life. But if again, it's some sort of time bending thing and the dog goes backwards to become alive, would they not recognize their owner? Again, I don't know. We're in a place that's hard to understand.
Yeah, I mean, the rules are all over the place, so you don't really know. You know what I mean?
You chuck me into a hole, and as I fall to the bottom, I start to become baby me. That doesn't mean baby me's gonna wind up in the woods nearby.
Yeah, that's just bent reality. It's wild.
This makes me think Stranger Things was a fascinating show because it caught on to some ideas like this, you just don't need the answer because it's just interesting enough and you have the rest of the plot. But this, no, you need the answers. You're claiming to be real. You got reality in your sails. Let's try to figure this out.
Yeah, these are grand claims here. And so I think there needs to be some sort of reality check happening.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to the black beams of light coming up out of this hole, some claim that these portals or this time warp or whatever could also somehow explain these dark beams of light. I don't know exactly. Once again, it's just kind of, the fact that it's a portal kind of explains that. But kind of building on that, they say that there's a lot of people who claim to have witnessed extraterrestrial activity in this area, and that this is why the government was so eager to strike it from any records. Maybe the airplane crash was actually the crash of a UFO or a UAP or some sort of action like that. Or, again, this then starts to harken into the subterranean aliens theory, which I won't even begin to unpack here, but ultimately, like, okay, sure, yes, if there's aliens in the area, maybe that's why things are going a little haywire.
Yeah.
But what is this blast of dark light? And what's the purpose of that? That's where I start to get, like, maybe aliens can bend space-time and break physics a little bit, but that doesn't mean they're just doing that. Let's turn his steel bucket into gold, and let's change the radio stations, and let's blast a big old beam of black light. And I just don't know if they'd be doing all that.
Yeah, that just is so wild and so isolated in one area.
Yeah.
It's far-fetched.
It's far-fetched. And again, like I said, this one is kind of like a break from all the heavy episodes we've done in recently in the big stream. But ultimately, I feel like we have a pretty shared opinion here.
Oh, yeah.
And ultimately, we may never know who this was, what was going on here. But it has certainly solidified itself as local urban legend there in the state of Washington.
Oh, yeah. And you think that you could just go and check it, but, like, I guess apparently not.
Right, because, like, is this the hole we're talking about? Come on, someone with these coordinates and a house being right there, someone must have been there.
Someone was there, and it's probably just someone that's not a part of internet culture and has no idea there's this whole conspiracy around this hole in their backyard.
Dude, this is like, okay, this is where I'm going to get a little meta, because way back in the day when, we were still part of a big old conglomerate company, and there's a lot of other moving parts. We talked about Red Web's next steps in evolution, and could there be other things that we did? And one of the iterations was like getting hands-on and tangible with stuff like this. I would love to tell the story of Mel's Hole, dissect it in an honest way, but then go there. I want to go to that hole and show the people, is this a hole or is this not? How hard is that,
It's like one of those things is like just go to the location. Just try to go to it. It should be there somewhere. Like you could find it and just look at it and go, that's a big hole, or that's not so big of a hole. Mm-hmm. But it's a mystery for a reason, whether you believe in it or not.
Right. It has certainly captured the imagination of many people, believers, skeptics, what have you. And again, it's one of those episodes where I feel very strongly that I think we debunk a lot of the extraordinary claims. That's the thing about extraordinary claims. They require extraordinary proof or just any evidence whatsoever. But it started intriguing when this was submitted, by the way, by Task Force member Mitty. Thank you so much for submitting this one, because when you first submitted it in, we were like, this sounds wild.
Yeah, it does.
And then he just starts like, he just takes the story too far too fast, maybe.
That's what I'm thinking, dude. I think the story has been taken too far too fast. I think that's the thing where it's just like you had everyone hooked, and I think at that point you went, oh, okay, like I got everyone's attention, and you just kind of like really ran with it.
Like one of those creepypasta stories that just like went on too long, and then you started to go, okay, you were real good, and then now I just like I can't fit what the story is going on with, or I don't know. But it does fit the same energy of like creepypastas where there's something fascinating to be said. Maybe this was like the format was radio show, and then it like, oh man, I don't know.
Yeah.
But Coast to Coast AM has got a lot of interesting things. A lot of like fascinating topics have popped up on that show before, but many of which lie very much in this territory. And that's only like a sliver of what Red Web has kind of discussed and uncovered. But any final thoughts?
It's a fun one, you know what I mean? It's definitely, like I said, off the bat, I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. I'm very intrigued. And there's a ton of stories that in a ton of different ways. You might have some that start off ridiculous and then end like you go, being more believable than when you first walked in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this was a fun one. It definitely is fun to cover stories that start strong and it's not that it didn't end strong, but just spiral out of control.
Yeah.
You know what
yeah.
I mean?
Like, how do we get here?
Yeah, but I'm about it. I thought it was very intriguing. It lands in the frustration section for me where I'm like, let's just go check it. Just go check the hole. Like, is it there? Or, we've had stories in the past before where it's just like, okay, like maybe this is real. Maybe this is not. I'm just like, or we could just send someone to go look. Sometimes we have the location and we're just like, we don't know. I'm like, or we could. Like, I feel like we could, but a fun one. Nonetheless.
A fun one nonetheless. And sometimes you got to just air it out with stuff like that. But you're right. Sometimes cases start really normal. And then suddenly a shark is caught in the wild, is put in an aquarium, throws up a severed arm, and that arm belongs to a missing person, and you crack open a true crime case of the century. Sometimes things like the shark arm case just happen and they're wilder than fiction. But yeah, it's also nice to explore these paranormal stories sometimes. But dang it, the freak in me wants to go like, all right, that's a coordinate, that's a house, we got an address, let me do a bit of Googling, let me ring them up and say, listen, full stop. I'm like an advertiser right now. Like, I'm sorry I'm hitting you with this, but could you walk about 100 feet south of your back door?
Yeah, dude.
And just take a photo of that hole?
All we need you to do is just take a look at that hole real quick. Thank you.
Just a glimpse. FaceTime me on that hole. And then if you really want to go, and then drop the FaceTime plus a handful of routers in 5-second successional drops, and just that way, let me know.
All right, I got a small ask.
I got a small ask. Get about 1,000 routers and an iPhone that could do FaceTime and drop them down.
Don't worry, I'll send the equipment. I have your address.
Don't worry, I know where you live. Yeah. Man, an interesting one. Mitty, thank you so much. If you want to submit, Task Force, an episode for us to explore, have fun with, a true crime case that you want us to unpack and react to, whatever it is, sometimes it's a movie club. Let us know. You can do that. We made a post that is available on our Patreon page, redwebpod.com. It's all about how to submit something. There is a link to a form. Then you're off to the races. But with that said, I also want to shout out some of the task force members. Our newest task force is Lady Ishka. Thank you so much for joining us. And then our buff scientist of the week is Luis. And then, of course, our squonks. We have a new one as well in the squonk list here. We have Brett O'Mura, Zarathustra, James Hill, and new squonk on the block is Evan Guillen or Guillen. However you prefer, let us know. But thank you all so much for supporting. Again, if you're here at the end, store.redwebpod.com. You got about 2.5 weeks on that exclusive July merch, so come and get it. The Patreon exclusive merch, it will be available for forever, but exclusively to the Patreon members. As a kind of thank you for supporting us directly, you get access to that real cool band tour shirt inspired design that we're really stoked about. All right, Fredo. Enjoyable diving down the rabbit hole or into Mel's hole today. But with that, I'll see you right back here next Monday for yet another mystery.